Hello, everyone, and welcome to another series of research in HRM Research. We have looked at few videos in the past, looking at what HRM is, what research is all about, what is HRM research, how do you write a background for your first chapter, and how do you write the problem statement. From problem statement, we have also looked at a video on how to write research aim, research objective, and research questions. Now, in this video, I'm going to provide you with overall, how do you complete, how do you write your chapter 1 of your research. It can be for your dissertation, or either your proposal or your project, your dissertation, or a thesis. Of course, thesis will be much more, I can say, but this is more for a project or a dissertation. Now, our focus was on HRM research in HRM. I've used the example of hybrid work in the past. Now, chapter 1. Now, this video is about chapter 1. What are the things that needs to be the essential components of your chapter 1 of your research? Chapter 1 of your research, of HRM research, commonly titled introduction. Usually we use a title introduction and a background, or just introduction. It must provide a roadmap for the entire study, entire research. Because from chapter 1, then you move into your chapter 2, which is going to be on a literature review, and chapter 3 will be on research methodology. Chapter 4 will be analysis and findings. Some will include findings as a separate chapter depending on the format of the institution. Chapter 4 will be analysis. Chapter 5 will be on the findings and interpretation of the findings. Okay, that will be chapter 5. Chapter 6 will be conclusion, recommendations, depending on the format of the institution. But chapter 1 is a chapter that provides the foundation to the other chapters. Before you move into your chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6, you need to make sure all the basic things about your research and everything is strong. That is given in your chapter 1. So chapter 1, okay, must provide roadmap for your entire research, entire study, by defining the research problem. Remember, I mentioned to you problem statement, providing the background, defining your research problem, the context, research aim, research objective. These are all essential. Research objective, apart from research objective, research question. Okay, these are the essential. Remember, background of the study, research problem, research question, research objective, research question. If you want to include hypothesis, depending on the nature of your study. If you want to formulate hypothesis, yes, you can also put it in your chapter 1. Then, then the significance of your study. What's the significance? At the end of the study, what is that you want to achieve? Depending, if you're just doing a project or a dissertation, practical significance. If you're a PhD student, then very important, you need to have theoretical implication, theoretical significance, research significance apart from practical significance. Doctoral students usually will have to go for theoretical and practical. Okay, also for some masters by research students. If you are an undergraduate, significance to theory, not likely. Of course, you need to state that if you want to state, but it is not a mandatory. Also depends on the institutions and expectations of the institutions. So some of the key components I mentioned to you, background, very important. The first is the background. Write the introduction and a background of the study. Okay, the contextualization introduces a background. Okay, introduction, if you are putting an introduction before background or background, up to you. It also depends on the format of the institution. Okay, the contextualization introduces a core HRM concept or theory is being investigated. Whether you're looking at the employee retention, employee engagement, performance appraisal, strategic HR, anything, you need to provide the context. And then the background establishes the context from which the research idea emerged, highlighting the evidence of a problem, specific organization, industry, geographical location, examples like turnover, high turnover, rates, decreased productivity. Remember, you have to look at the video that I have created, that I have that I have on how do we write background of the study in your chapter 1. Then after the background, you need to move from the background, you need to move to your problem statement. Problem statement. Problem statement, remember 3 C's I have mentioned to you. Go to that particular video on the problem statement. Okay, it's in the series, in the research series. How do we write a problem statement? What are the 3 C? Okay, context, conflict, consequences, if you remember that. Okay, in a problem statement, you need to provide clear definition, specific paragraph summarizing the gap between the current state, the problem, and a desired state. Okay, and the problem statement must be the problem must be one that can be solved or better understood through scientific data collection and analysis. Make sure this is a researchable topic, and make sure the problem statement is something that is current and relevant. So the citation must be more recent. And from your problem statement, you move into your overall aim of your study, overall goal of the study. And from the aim, you can break down the main aim into actionable steps. That will be your objective. Okay, remember the previous video, I've talked to you about writing objective and also your research question. Depending, you want to have 3 objective, 4 objective, depends. Okay, objective you need to, when you write, to examine, to evaluate, to assess, to explore. Okay, include these are the words that you can include. Okay, right, to assess, to examine, remember, right. Then from your objective, you will be moving into research question and or hypothesis, if you want to include hypothesis. For quantitative studies, yes, some of you will have hypothesis. I'm not a quantitative person. Mine is mostly qualitative. Okay, it's a qualitative. Whether quantitative or qualitative, you will have research questions. Okay, research questions investigate the underlying curiosity of your study, starting with what, why, how. Depending on the word, what, why, how, what, why, okay, the nature, whether you're going for quantitative and qualitative, can be seen from the nature of your questions. And then hypothesis, as I said to you, for quantitative, which is a testable statement predicting relationship between HRM variable. For example, you want to find out, is there a positive relationship between training program and employee performance? What is a relationship between training? You do training and employee performance. Okay, that is, you want to do a prediction. You need to do, you want to test it. Then after the research questions, you can include significance of the study. What is the significance of the study? What is the contribution the study is going to make? If you want to do theoretical contribution, but theoretical contribution more important if you are a research student for master's research or PhD research students, theoretical contribution. How the study fills the gap in the existing literature, how it's going to contribute to the theory in that particular field. But most common significant of the study is a practical application. How the findings will help HR practitioners, especially for HR research. How it will help HR practitioners, HR managers, and organization to improve practices. For example, practice to improve retention, practice to better performance evaluation, practice to improve employee engagement, practice to improve recruitment, practice to improve effective use of AI in HRM practices. All these are practical application. Apart from practical significance, for some of the research, especially masters by research as well as PhD, you can also include contribution for future research. How other researchers will be able to use this research to expand the knowledge. These are some of the things. Well, some of these will be elaborated more when you write your final chapter, whether chapter 5 or chapter 6, where you will expand more about the significance, contribution of the study. Okay. Apart from significance of the study that you write after your research questions, you can also include the scope and delimitation. Delimitation. Now you can include the scope. Scope is a boundary of the study. What specific industry, geography, time frame. That will be your scope. Delimitation clearly states what not included in a study to keep it manageable. There are things that you cannot include. What are the things not included to keep it manageable? And after the scope and delimitation, if you want to include limitation, what are the limitation? Limitation means what's your constraint? What are your constraint? Constraint in this part, when you write, you need to identify factors outside your control. Your means you means the researcher's control. Outside the researcher's control, such as like if you are doing an organization or industry-based data, some of the limitations will be your access to confidential data. Limited sample size. You might not, you're not able to get large sample size. And another limitation, which is a common limitation, is a limitation depending, because you're not doing a longitudinal study, cross-sectional study that needs to be completed either in 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, depending on the nature of your research. Time constraint can be one of the factor limitation. Okay, and after you have completed that, another part that you have to include in your chapter 1 towards the completion of your chapter 1 is organization of the study, organization of this thesis or this dissertation. Structure of your study, overview, give a brief outline of what will be discussed in subsequent chapters. What is chapter 1? Chapter 1 is about what? What do we cover in chapter 1? And then chapter 2, what are the things that you're going to write in chapter 2? That is the literature review. And then chapter 3 is about what? What is about chapter 3? That is methodology. Commonly, chapter 3 is about methodology. Chapter 4 is the analysis. Okay, where you provide comprehensive analysis with tables, with statistics, with data, with charts, with diagrams, or all that. Chapter 4. Okay, chapter 5. Let's say if you have findings and interpretation, everything you are doing in chapter 4, you might not need to do it in chapter 5, and your thesis dissertation can complete in chapter 5. But depending on institutional format, if you have chapter 5, that is on findings and interpretation of the findings, and chapter 6 is the last chapter. Mostly it is a last chapter. It is going to be on the conclusion of your study, conclusion, how you are going to conclude, and then your recommendation and contribution and everything that you would like to write, you can write in the last chapter. And finally, for every chapter, not only in chapter 1, it can also apply to other chapters, you need to have chapter summary. Chapter summary will be the key points, summary of the main arguments, objective presented in chapter 1. So what are the arguments that are presented in chapter? What is entire chapter 1 is all about? Summarize. So you have a chapter summary. So these are the information that must or needs to be there in your chapter 1. At the same time, please also look at the format or the instruction provided based on your institution. Every institutions will have differently. Okay, in my institutions, I follow whatever I'm providing here is found in my institution. But other institution might have different formats. Okay, remember, I'm not somebody who's expert in research methodology, but of course, every academic must understand basics, because at the doctoral level, when I completed my doctoral research many years ago, that was many years ago. Okay, almost how many years? Almost when I started my doctoral, coming close to 20. Okay, but I completed 16, all right, around years back, 16, 17 years back. All right. So this year is 2026. So I know from my background, okay, these are some of the essential things that you need. Okay. So, all right. So I hope you will be able to follow. If you are able to follow effectively, you should be able to complete your chapter 1. And chapter 1 is a fundamental foundation that leads you to the other chapters. Chapters on the literature review, on the methodology, findings, and also the last chapter, right? So if needed, I will be continuing this series to look at how do we write chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and 5, up to the completion of a dissertation. I hope the series have benefited you, and probably we will meet again in next series. All right. Thank you, everyone.